Welcome back. You're watching Nation Tonight. In a major milestone for India's space sector, space startup Agnikul Cosmos launched Agnibaan, a small satellite launch rocket. It's the second launch by a private startup in India, but it is the first to use a private launch pad at Sriharikota. In fact, this launch has a lot of firsts. It's India's first semi-cryo rocket engine. To start with, it has the world's first 3D printed rocket engine called Agnibaan. It has also used the first ever Ethernet-based avionic architecture. Autopilot software in the rocket was also used in this launch, and of course, it was launched from India's first private launch pad called Dhanush. Now, the Agnibaan sorted mission, or the suborbital technology demonstrator mission, lifted off at 7:15 in the morning and lasted approximately 2 minutes, marking a significant achievement for the country in the development of indigenous space technology. To help us understand this better, I'm joined by Professor Satyanarayanan Chakravarthy, founding advisor of Agnikul Cosmos and faculty at the Department of Aerospace at IIT Madras. Professor Chakravarthy, good evening. Thank you very much for speaking with us on Mirror Now. Congratulations on this major achievement. Help us understand first, how did this all begin? What was the idea behind it?
Agnikul Cosmos started in this very same building. And in fact, much of the discussions have happened in this particular conference room where I am sitting, starting from 2017, when my co-founders approached me and wanted me to join the co-founding team to start the company and incubate it at IIT Madras and work out of the National Center for Combustion R&D here. Starting from here, we actually put together the little pieces of the engine that has flown today, particularly starting from the injector that is used for injecting the fuel and oxidizer together. Then we have done igniter tests, and then we have now clustered the injectors and the igniter together, and then put them in a combustion chamber, and started learning how to actually develop a 3D printed rocket engine, and tested the 3D printed rocket engine in our new campus for safety reasons in a remote area. And we have mastered the art of doing that several times over, including a vertical stack test to mimic exactly how the launch configuration would be in a vertical mode, and even gone through like what's called as a gimbaling of the engine that is required for in-flight thrust vector control for maintaining the trajectory. All of that stuff has actually happened at IIT Madras. In addition, at IIT Madras Research Park, we also have a rocket factory where we have a 3D printer with which we make the entire engine ourselves and qualify it before we take it to the other campus for static testing.
Professor Chakravarthy, lots of nitty-gritties involved in it, lots of technical terms that you used. For instance, the world's first 3D printed rocket engine. Help us understand what that really means.
Yeah. So this is actually, if you notice, a lot of the narrative, the operative word is the world's most integrated single-piece 3D printed rocket engine. That essentially means that there are a few other companies that have now started using 3D printing of rocket engines extensively, but they do it in big chunks of parts that they further have to assemble with flanges, nuts, bolts, or in whichever manner of fastening. But here we start a single piece from where you have an inlet to the fuel and inlet to the oxidizer, which is liquid oxygen in this case. And all of that stuff actually goes through lots of, flow paths, multiple injectors, and then there is an igniter that we are also connected, all integrated in one particular piece. Then the burning happens, and then what comes out is the rocket exhaust. So that entire piece has absolutely no joints at all. It encompasses about 1,000 plus parts and would avoids about some 3,000 to 3,000 plus welds that would normally have to take place for a conventional way of making the engine. So it eliminates the micro machining that's required, the precision machining that's required for all those parts, the precision assembly of all those parts, and that welding that's required, which will typically take about a month, but this can be done in about 3 days in a 3D printer in a single shot.
Professor Chakravarthy, since morning we're hearing ISRO, of course, congratulated your team. Prime Minister Modi as well extended his greetings. And it is, of course, a major achievement by Indian space sector. But help us also, sort of simplify for us and get an understanding as to where this puts and this places India on the global space map.
It signifies a few technological milestones as well as economic capability, in my view. And that's the reason why I think the Prime Minister has been fairly ecstatic about what's happened today. So on the technological front, as I said, the 3D printing capability that we have demonstrated essentially means that we can make rockets on demand within about a week to 2 weeks. We can actually assemble an entire rocket to be able to take a satellite. So if a customer who's typically bringing in a satellite comes in with a satellite, we can actually start the rocket from scratch from a metallic powder and then start printing the rockets and customize the rocket to the particular satellite in terms of how many engines that we need to cluster together for offering the launch to be the cheapest in the world. So taking it forward, we expect that Agnikul Cosmos technology will offer the cheapest rocket launch in this particular weight category of satellites that we are looking at, and we have the ability to also grow this weight category to what is commercially very, very competitive that's prevailing in the market. So that is something that, and then the on-demand capability also means that there is a very, very huge national security implication for launching satellites on demand by the military. And this could also be for any other friendly countries that India would permit us to do. So that's a larger picture as far as what the technology enables. Particularly, the semi-cryo is something that we have demonstrated in flight for the first time in India. Although it's a fairly old technology in the world, ISRO has been working on a very large engine that they will be using to launch their vehicles in the future. They have recently done a ground test of it as well. But as a flight test, I think this is the first time that we're doing, which means that we have had to do some amount of mastering of this combination of fuel and oxidizer all by ourselves and prove the results to ISRO before we could actually get to launch.
And there's also, therefore, Professor Chakravarthy, an aim to sort of dominate the small satellite launch market. Is that it?
That's exactly the goal.
Okay, let me then, ask you my last question, Professor Chakravarthy. The government has been encouraging the PPP partnership in the space sector. Privatization is something that the space sector has been opened up to in the last few years. What sort of help do you get from the government, the encouragement, the support? How is that working for the Indian space industry?
Yeah, I think the government support has been extremely thorough right from the top. I can say personally, even from the Prime Minister himself, who has been watching this. But I think more importantly, the government has actually laid out an entire process by which this can happen seamlessly with any space startup. It's not necessarily particularly Agnikul as such. So they had announced the in-space, for example, in 2020, just at the peak of COVID during the program that they had announced about 2 months into the lockdown. And subsequently, ISRO was actually picking up the ropes on how this in-space should facilitate startups to utilize ISRO's facilities as well as expertise itself. And then in-space was formed formally and inaugurated later on. And subsequently, the in-space organization has been very instrumental in getting ISRO scientists to work with us together. And in the last couple of months that we have actually been attempting to do this launch, we can actually see ISRO scientists working shoulder to shoulder through night and day, literally having to get this launch to be successful. They have been extremely enthusiastic in supporting us.
All right, Professor Chakravarthy, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on Mirror Now on Nation Tonight and sharing your thoughts and helping us better understand, and all the best for your future endeavors as well. Thank you very much.